In a world where multi-million-dollar deals are sealed with a handshake, one case dared to ask, what if that handshake was a thumbs-up emoji? Welcome to the crazy new frontier of contract law. As this next case proves, a tiny emoji can pack a very real legal punch. Come with me on this journey as I illustrate what happens when contract law meets the wild, wild west of texting, where a tiny digital gesture might just cost you $82,000 and then some, and make you rethink every emoji you've ever sent. Picture this. You're a busy farmer smack in the middle of negotiating a grain sale. Lots of crops, lots of fields, and now, apparently, lots of texting. You're casually scrolling through your phone, responding to texts when you send a thumbs-up emoji to a message. Harmless enough, right? Well, not if you're Chris Actor, who learned the hard way that in the eyes of the court, a tiny pixelated thumb can cost you $82,200. Come along for the courtroom drama that is Southwest Terminal Limited versus Actor Land Limited, where an emoji can mean a whole lot. Let's start with the characters involved. On one hand, we have Southwest Terminal Limited, who we'll simply refer to as SWT, a grain and crop inputs company run by Mr. Kent. He is SWT's star player, a farm manager and grain buyer extraordinaire. On the other hand, we find Actor Land and Cattle Limited, or simply Actor, which is operated by Chris Actor, a busy farmer and, evidently, occasional user of emojis. He was also a man who probably never dreamed that his choice of emoji would result in a lawsuit or that his texting habits could become the stuff of legal legend. The relationship between these two companies dates back to 2012, when Chris and Kent first began their business relationship, mostly through text messages that included words like "looks good" and "yup" to seal deals. You know, the kind of eloquent contract negotiations Shakespeare would have wept over, but we'll get to that later. SWT was looking to buy 87 metric tons of flax from Actor, and Actor, we assume, was unwittingly nodding along. Digitally, of course. This all seemed fine until the flax was due, and Actor failed to deliver. SWT, having already imagined fields of flax coming their way, wasn't too pleased and rushed to court citing breach of contract and seeking compensation in the sum of $82,200.21 plus interest and legal costs. Chris, predictably, wasn't having any of this. He denied that a contract ever existed, arguing that there had been no signed agreement, no physical handshake, no paper with ink on it, and certainly nothing as remotely serious as a formal meeting. SWT's case, he claimed, was as flimsy as the thumbs-up emoji he'd sent in response to Kent's text. So, how hard can communication be that these two would get into such a serious misunderstanding? Well, as it turns out, communication between the two began when Kent, SWT's enthusiastic grain buyer, sent a message to several farmers, including Chris Actor. In the message, Kent offered to buy flax on staggered dates in October, November, and December. What followed was a phone call from Actor Limited, which, by all accounts, seemed to go well. So well, in fact, that Kent immediately drew up a formal written contract. This document reflected what was agreed upon, that SWT would buy 86 metric tons of flax at $17 per bushel from Actor, with delivery set for November. Kent, feeling that all was in order, then snapped a photo of the contract with his phone and sent it to Chris, along with a simple message: "Please confirm flax contract." At this point, one might expect a long back-and-forth exchange of documents, perhaps even a visit from a courier with the final polished document and signature. But no. Instead, Chris Actor, with the boldness of a man who assumed this would never come up again, texted back a single thumbs-up emoji. This entire case hinges on that emoji and what it means. According to Kent, SWT and ACTA had a perfectly good contract, sealed with none other than a thumbs-up emoji from Chris ACTA himself. Simple and straightforward. Right? Wrong. Chris argued that he had merely acknowledged receipt of the proposal. He hadn't agreed to sell anything. The thumbs up, according to him, wasn't intended to say, "I agree." It was more like, "Yep, I saw you, little document." Chris seemed to believe that the legal system is traditionally more fond of grand, sweeping signatures on paper, not digital hand signals. So, to him, no contract had been signed and none existed. But, as the court was about to demonstrate, times change. So, what exactly constitutes a contract? Let's take a brief detour into the essentials of a contract. You see, for a contract to arise and be legally binding, you need three main things: an offer, an acceptance, and valid consideration, i.e., money or something else of value changing hands. It's like a three-legged stool. Without one leg, the whole thing topples over. There are other requirements, but these are the three basic ones. Now back to the story. There's no question that Kent made an offer to buy the flax. He sent this offer to several sellers. The dispute is whether Chris, with his breezy emoji, actually accepted that offer. To Kent, that emoji was as good as ink on paper. But according to Chris, the thumbs up emoji was just his way of saying, "Yeah, I got your text." In his mind, an emoji wasn't as legally binding as a signature. Because really, when are emojis ever that serious? Kent, however, wasn't buying this. He argued that in their past dealings, Chris ACTA's responses to similar requests had been brief and to the point. Things like, "Okay," or "looks good." In those cases, contracts were formed and grain was delivered. So why should a thumbs-up emoji be any different? At one point, Kent's lawyer even pulled up Google on his phone and typed in "thumbs up emoji meaning" into the search bar. Unsurprisingly, Google responded with the interpretation that a thumbs up means "I approve." When confronted with this interpretation, Chris hedged, probably wondering why he hadn't just typed out "got it" instead. In the end, the court wasn't interested in Chris ACTA's subjective interpretation of his emoji use. The question was whether a reasonable person in Kent's shoes would have seen the thumbs up as an acceptance of the contract. The court, rather pragmatically, concluded that yes, a reasonable person would indeed think that the emoji signified agreement. After all, the two parties had a history of curt, brief confirmations. The court found that Chris had, in the past, responded with "okay" or "yup," and grain had been delivered without issue. Chris ACTA, it seemed, had unintentionally signed himself up for a flax deal via emoji. And so, the court held that the parties had indeed entered into a binding contract. The thumb had spoken. This has been Laws and Outlaws. If you enjoyed this real-life court drama, please subscribe and join us on our next courtroom adventure. See you there.